most shady. Frankie, baby.
You see, what Frank has to understand is that he's not in America like Bob Arum. So the fallout for Bob's in terms of him just acting like he's business as usual in America is a little different. After Bob cancelled the undisputed fight at heavy, he had an undisputed fight at 140 to go see about that he was promoting. Frank ain't got that. Frank has come back to the domestic scene and he wants to go back to business as usual. But right now, there's a whole load of people, and not just Anthony Joshua fans, but Tyson Fury fans, who are looking at Frank like to say, well, what was your part in this awfully suspect plot twist? How are you going to respond to what Eddie said, that you could have terminated the contract between Wilder in December, and it would have been plain sailing to make the fight between AJ and Fury? This is according to Eddie. Now, if Eddie is lying, he said what he said a couple of days ago, and nobody from Fury's party have come out attacking Eddie about that. Get them receipts. Is Eddie Hearn lying? That's the question. And from what I heard, Frank was stuttering all over the gaff when it was brought up. I couldn't listen to the whole of it. I just couldn't deal with it. How does he respond to that? And he's got to be careful how he responds to that. He's in the party that walked away from the fight. He's in the party that while Eddie was doing everything he could to make the fight, was giving off negative energy all the time. He said something about Eddie making announcements didn't help the fight get made. What's that got to do with the arbitration? And what, Bob Arum and Tyson Fury didn't make announcements? Frank's the only one who didn't make announcements. Fury made an announcement literally a day before they cancelled it. So all this business as usual, I want to make Joshua Buatsi versus Callum Johnson next, would make the fight in a heartbeat. I'm not sure if his team would let him near that one, but if he wants to fight a live opponent, it's there if they want it. So hold on. Just days after your guy, your team, your fighter, your boss, pull out of the biggest fight in British boxing history, you want to come and accuse Matchroom fighters of ducking Queensberry fighters? This is your response to that? No one's taking you seriously. Automatically somebody responded to him, so you can let Eddie Hearn do all the work and chasing, sit back, let it all happen, then right at the end say he's busy and we didn't know, but have the venue and date booked. Remember last year? I will personally sit down with Eddie Hearn to make these big fights. He started with Charlie Edwards versus Cal Yafai, or it could have been Sonny, one of the Edwards. Metcalf versus Fowler. Archie Sharp versus Zelfa Barrett. Chris Jenkins versus Conor Benn, a fight that Matchroom tried to make and got no cooperation with BT or Frank. Nathan Gorman versus Dave Allen. Liam Williams versus Andrade. We got that through the WBO mandatory. Joe Joyce versus Derek Chisora. Dubois versus Dillian White. And Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. Remember all that? Let's work together to make the big fights happen. Well, what work did you do to make Fury versus Joshua happen? The biggest fight out of all of them. The biggest fight in British boxing history. And then you've got the nerve, days after this, to call out Matchroom fighters? Nah, you know what you need to do? Go put Callum Johnson in with Lyndon Arthur or Anthony Yard. I'll tell you what. You had Deck Spellman headlining a couple of your cards last year. Why don't you recycle old Deck? Bring Deck back. Don't call out no Joshua Buatsi, though, and expect anyone to take you serious.
The most shady. Frankie, baby.
It's like the hate for Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn has got to almost epidemic proportions. Like, they're getting attacked about the Usyk fight, about a decision they haven't made. Oh, look, they're going to drop the belt and not fight Usyk. The decision hasn't been made yet. But this is what you're saying. And look, it's got to the stage here where some of you accused AJ of screwing up the Wilder fight, even though we saw what happened with the DAZN deal on Wilder. You blame him for that. You blame him for the Fury fight not happening. Right? You've took Frank Warren's side. And now you're accusing him of not fighting Usyk. And even before AJ and Fury was negotiated, some of you were saying, oh, he's fighting Fury to duck Usyk. So wait, he's trying to put the undisputed fight on. Anyway, let's not go for it, right? So the hatred is what it is. Anthony Joshua is never going to please everybody. And it's about time that he started putting his foot down and say, fuck it. The sanctioning bodies ain't going to let him keep the belts together anyway. He's tried to fight for undisputed 2 times. It's about time he just started fighting who he wants to fight. And if it means losing the belt, lose the belt. If you think he's scared of Usyk, he's scared of Usyk. That's your opinion. But he should fight who he wants to fight. If he wants to take on Andy Ruiz, go do it. Do what you want. When Deontay Wilder kept Dillian out for how much days at number 1, and when the WBC helped lock him out when he was mandatory with Wilder and Fury, some of you haters of Dillian White, you didn't give him no leeway at all. So look, if Dillian wants to go fight Chris Arreola in America and you think it's soft touch, that's your opinion. Dillian can do what he wants. AJ, after 10 world title fights, he's earned the right to do what he wants as well. Everyone does what they want in boxing. But AJ can't? No. Look, let's start changing the narrative, bruh. Anything that's good for the fighters that you guys root for is good for anyone else. That's where we got to start. Until you guys put it on a fair playing field, we can't have it no other way. If AJ was to give up that WBO title and Usyk was to fight for it, there'd be a cult following talking about how Usyk is a throwback fighter and he was ready to fight AJ and he'll take on all challenges and he'll be the champion that AJ wasn't. Until he lets you down like Michael Hunter. I can predict it all from there. I hear a lot of boxing fans talking about the cancelled fight between Fury and AJ, and they're saying that they sold the UK out for money by attempting to put the fight on in Saudi Arabia rather than Britain. Now, some people will say some of that decision is based on the pandemic stopping live gates in the United Kingdom, but it's not really. The maximum profit for a fight like that is in Saudi Arabia. They're the people with the money. And I find it strange people saying that. Yes, I would prefer an undisputed fight between 2 Brits to be in the UK, of course. But it's not a British title fight, it's a world title fight. This should tell you about the growth of modern day British boxing, that so much people are bidding for it outside the UK. In what was considered the true golden era of heavyweight boxing, the 70s, that world title got outsourced to Kingston, Jamaica, Frazier versus Foreman. The Congo, or Zaire should I say, Ali versus Foreman. Before that, Venezuela, Foreman versus Norton. Manila, Ali and Frazier free. And they're the big major fights. And of course you had Ali fighting in Ireland against Al Blue Lewis, another American. He fought Joe Bugner in Kuala Lumpur. And then even after that, in the 80s, when Sugar Ray Leonard was coming up, the first fight against Duran was in Montreal, Canada. They went where the money was. The logistics between a British title fight and a world title fight are 2 different situations. In 1976, Ali fought Richard Dunn from Britain in Germany. Neither one of them are German. There was just a demand to see Ali perform, so he went to Germany.
And then, when the arbitration ruling comes through, you clearly see that Top Rank had the ability to terminate the agreement with Deontay Wilder back in December. But the fact is, they didn't terminate. They kept planning the fight. They kept talking to the PBC.
So basically, this arbitration, and you have to think that the arbitration was set up right now, and the PBC was in on it all along. If it's true that Top Rank could have terminated the 3rd fight contract with Wilder in December, but they chose not to. So basically, we as boxing fans, not all boxing fans, because, there's some people who are happy about the outcome of this, and that's fair enough. But we've been strung along as boxing fans from getting this undisputed heavyweight title that we were promised. Contenders like Usyk, Joe Joyce, Hrgovic, can't really say Michael Hunter because he ducked out over the eliminator with Hrgovic. Their careers have been jammed up by this decision to, I assume, clout chase off Anthony Joshua's name. Can't forget the likes of Dillian White. He's also a casualty. And you have to wonder about, forget Bob Arum. You know what I mean? Look, nothing Bob does can surprise me. Anyone who's followed the channel for a long enough time, they know this. Forget Bob. Bob has no accountability to nobody, right? But Wilder and Fury They must either really be envious of Anthony Joshua or really have a severe hatred for him as fellow fighters. I wonder what one it is. Maybe it's both. That you would string out this arbitration until you see a little bit of light in terms of them easing up on the restrictions on the pandemic, and then do this. And then I've had to block some more idiots off the channel because you don't get to have your say. It's as simple as that. You want to say that Eddie Hearn knew there was an arbitration and almost put equal blame on Eddie for the fight not happening. So what, was Eddie in on it as well to play Anthony Joshua? Is that what you're saying? He was privy to all the schemes and scams that was going on with the arbitrator, or the boxing traitor as I call him, Frank Warren and Bob and Tyson and Wilder and Shelley and Al. You sound ridiculous. You don't get to talk on this channel. Not one word. The fact that some of you put so much on Eddie Hearn, like Eddie Hearn has to negotiate with these people in the Middle East, keep his current crop of fighters happy, sort out their fight cards, and then he has to have the inside track on the arbitration that his fighter ain't going through. He's taken the word of perhaps the oldest promoter in the game, him and Don King. He took his word that even if it rules against us, we'll have to pay damages and it's not going to be a problem. He took his word, a man who's supposed to be a professional, and you still want to be over here talking rubbish? So I had to explain to someone on my channel, because they said, yeah, Eddie should have made sure he knew all about the arbitration. I had to explain to him, yeah, that's right, because he said Eddie didn't do a background check on Chris Lovejoy's promotional situation. I said, if Chris Lovejoy passes a medical and is able to get licensed in the UK, no liability can fall on Eddie Hearn if he fights on an Eddie Hearn card. He hasn't signed Chris Lovejoy, he's just fighting on a card. All the liability would have been on Chris Lovejoy. Medicals and licensing is Eddie's main concern for most the imports or journeymen fighting on his card, that they can get through them. If you think he's going through every single fighter and their promotional background to fight on a card, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind if you think any promoter does that. Let's say this question was posed before the internet and social media. How long would it take to do a background check on someone trying to deceive you that they ain't got a promoter? Or even with social media, how long would it take? It would take up to 6-8 months maybe, just to find out if this journeyman or gatekeeper can fight on your card. Nobody, no promoter does that. You go to cities like where Anthony Yard had his comeback fight in Spain and see if you can do all them background checks with whatever commissions are over there. Or in some of them backwaters in America. I challenge you to go do background checks and see if you come up with accurate information. States like Oklahoma in America. You know, they had fighters like Buck Smith. When Buck Smith fought Kirkland Lang, he had an amazing record. But I tell you what, I challenge you to do a background check on some of his opponents' promotional situations. Because some of his opponents were dodgy. And that's what was going on in a lot of them states. Mexico. If you think that British boxing or the mainstream American scene is a law unto itself, go into some of them backwaters around the world and see if you can get accurate information on promotional situations for boxers, etc., etc. In fact, Chris Lovejoy fought on a Manuel Char card just the other day, yeah? And it was Errol Kailan, if that's how you pronounce it, and Char himself who promoted the card. Apparently, Lovejoy is still under contract with Don King. And Don King is going to take Lovejoy into the system for breach of contract. There's nothing being said about Don King going after Char or Kalen. So although you think Eddie's Superman, because even though you diss Eddie and claim you hate him, inadvertently you think Eddie is more clever than you. But Eddie can't do everything. The only way, as a promoter, you can be successful doing cross promotions, you have to have trust in your peers. If you can't trust Bob Arum or Frank Warren to do these big fights, well, he's fucked, basically. So Eddie has to know every single in and out of what's going on, even stuff that he's not privy to or in control of. He doesn't know how legit the arbitration was. He hasn't got a clue. And how would he? Yes, you could argue that maybe he just shouldn't have went into it while they was in this so-called arbitration. But he was told by a Hall of Fame boxing promoter that it's not going to be a hassle. You are the same ones who would have loved Eddie to say that. Nah, we're going to wait until they sort out the arbitration. Doesn't want the Fury fight. I'm not with grown men who like playing games with other grown men like that. I'm not with it. So he's working with Bob Arum, who's been in the game before I was born, and Frank Warren, who's been in the game since 1980. Yeah? They're supposed to be joint partners in this venture. So Eddie has to look over everything he's doing because he can't trust them? Is that how you guys think business works? Ask Bob Arum how Donald Trump went back on his word 10 days before the first bell of Foreman and Holyfield, 1991. Said, no, I haven't got all the money. They already turned down the other bid, which was 500,000 less than what Trump bid. And they weren't going to go with Donald because, you know, he's a bit shaky. But one of Bob's partners said, a deal is a deal. He bid the highest. We got to go with Trump. Trump's casinos, you know, they're doing some shaky business, weren't doing that well. 10 days before the fight, he called Kathy Duver and Bob in the office and said, I haven't got that kind of money. So he gave them around 9 million instead of the 11.5 million that he promised them, some hotel rooms. And then you also had the pay-per-view revenue. And Bob thought, okay, it shouldn't be a financial disaster if we can make this work. But he was out 2 million. He was out 2.5 million. Trump fleeced him. That's business. And that's dirty business. Trump is a dirty businessman. And Bob Arum has learnt from the worst. Yeah? The Gulf War was going on at the time and Trump tried to say it's an act of war. So I'm calling off the deal. You don't like it, sue me. That's the shit he was going on with. There wasn't one single Iraqi troop on American soil. And he's calling for an act of war. So Bob and Kathy managed to salvage 9 million out of the 11 they were supposed to get. And let's not forget, they could have got 11.5 from the other bid. So he fleeced them. So what should Bob have done? I'm sure there's some stuff he could do, but sometimes you are meticulous to a fault and you still come up short. It's business. That's why certain people just stick to a 9 to 5 because there's more security. It's more stable. It's easier to handle than doing these big business moves.